guys, and welcome back to Reading with Mo. I finally have a chance to sit down and talk to you guys about the books that I read in the month of September. Sorry for this very belated wrap up, but better late than never, I guess, and I definitely didn't want to skip a September wrap up because I actually read a lot of good books that I want to share with you guys. I think altogether I have like 12 things or something like that I want to talk to you guys about, so let's waste no time and get straight into them. So first, I'll talk to you guys about the book series that I read or continued with in the month of September. The first one was, I do not have the actual physical copy of it, but Dragonhaven by Robin Hobb. This is the second book in the Rainwild Chronicles quartet, I believe. And well, actually, I gave this book 4 stars. I enjoyed it. I would say that this part of the series isn't my favorite part, but I am enjoying continuing in this whole realm of the Elderling series. This series, I feel like in general, is most people's least favorite as part of the realm of the Elderling series, but I am enjoying seeing some of the people from the Live Ship Traders trilogy showing back up in this series as well. With this book specifically, it's kind of weird because the first book cut off at a random spot, so I guess like the first and second books should have actually been one book or something like that, I think I heard of. But anyways, I am going to be continuing on with the rest of the series in October, and yeah, I guess there's not really much more to say about this series without spoilers, because I'm really in the thick of this series, very deep into it, and if I talk about what it's about, it's very much spoilers. I also decided to start a new series in the month of September. So the one that I picked up was Red Rising by Robin Hobb, and this book is a, I don't even know what genre exactly this would be, like dystopian kind of series. It's more kind of like in the sci-fi genre, I guess is what you could put it in. This is a really nice, beautiful edition that was published from Fairy Loot, I believe, that I purchased some time ago. I'm finally getting around to reading these. In this book, we are following Darrow, who is a member of the Red class of his society. So in their society, everybody is kind of separated by the color of their blood, and Reds are the lowest of the low. They have to do the menial labor, and in the beginning of the book, we are following him in his cast where they live and doing the work. They work in the mines to harvest this element that allows them to be able to live on Mars, which is also why this book is, yeah, sci-fi, because this book takes place in the future on Mars, and apparently the Earth people have moved there because we can't live on Earth anymore, or something like that. Without giving away any spoilers, like, I did enjoy this book, but I didn't like it as much as I really wanted to. It actually took me quite a while to get through this book because I kept putting it down and then just picking other things up in the meantime. I am going to be continuing on with the series. I was hoping it was going to be, honestly, like a new favorite series of all time, but unfortunately it's not. I just think something with the main character Darrow isn't super compelling to me as a character, but I'm more so continuing on because I'm interested in the world and how he potentially may be able to change things for his people and stuff like that. So I will be continuing on, and I'll let you guys know my thoughts on the next book next month. Okay, so we'll continue through the books now roughly in the order that I read them. So the next one I read as an audiobook, and that is The It Girl by Ruth Ware. I haven't picked up a Ruth Ware book in a while. Her books are kind of hit or miss for me. I gave this one 4 stars. It's a mystery thriller, I believe, if I remember correctly. And I know this book was also a pick for Kayla from Books and Lala's channel for the Literally Dead Book Club pick. And I was able to watch the live show for that. I enjoyed this book, but I have to tell you, looking back on it now, like roughly a month later, that it's not super memorable to me. So I am a little bit questioning the 4-star rating that I gave it, just because I have like a hard time remembering even what happened. But I remember while I was listening to the audiobook that I enjoyed it, but thinking that it was way too long for a mystery thriller. I forget how many hours it is now, maybe like 17 or 21, something that was just way too long for a mystery thriller. In general, I feel like it could have been edited down a bit. This book kind of takes place in an academic setting. We are following, I think it was 2 timelines now, see, I'm having a hard time even remembering. We are following a group of 4 friends who are all going to school at Oxford, and by the second term, one of them will have died. And we are following our main character Hannah as she's like kind of reconnecting with old friends, and she, based on her testimony, was able to get who they believe was the killer of Hannah put in jail, but now there's new evidence that's coming up, and journalists reaching out to try to see if possibly they got things wrong all those years ago. And so we're kind of going back and forth between what's happening now and all the timeline leading up to the events of the death in the past when they were all at school together. I have read, I think, all of Ruth Ware's books mostly, except I think the only one I haven't read is In a Dark, Dark Wood. But yeah, I read The Woman in Cabin 10, Turn of the Key, Death of Mrs. Westaway, The Lion Game, One by One. So I have read most of her books. I feel like they are very easy to read, easy to listen to mystery thrillers. While they don't like usually blow my mind or anything, they are entertaining enough at the moment to listen to them. Next we have another new release, and this one is one I listened to an audiobook as well. It's called What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This one I gave 3 stars. I believe this was a book I also picked up for the Literally Dead book club as well, correct me if I'm wrong, and I enjoyed this one. This is actually a retelling of Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher, which I had never read before, but I did read it after reading this book to kind of see the original source material that the author was working from. In this book, we're following Alex Easton, who is a retired soldier and is coming to visit their childhood friend who they found out is like sick or something is wrong with them, they're dying, and so they go to their house, which is called the House of Usher, because their last names are Usher, and it's this house in the kind of more rustic, remote countryside of a place called Ruritania. There, Madeline is suffering from some weird condition. They don't know what exactly is wrong with her. And I can't really say too much as well because this book is pretty short. I remember I did enjoy it, but the book kind of felt more like an extended short story, definitely kind of more of a novella. I thought it was okay. I have not actually read anything else by this author before. This is my first time experiencing T. Kingfisher's writing. I would possibly pick up something from them again in the future, but for now, like, this book didn't like wildly wow me, so I'm not like itching to do it very soon. But it wasn't bad. I'm glad that I did enjoy it and see it for myself, and it was really cool being able to read, like I said, the book along with its original source material. Next, we have Blue Ticket by Sophie McIntosh. Last month, I also was taking part in Bookoplathon, and some of these books were books I picked because of certain roles that I made on the board. I couldn't tell you what the roles were now, but you can go back and watch my TBR if you're curious to see if I read the ones I actually said I was going to. This book I ended up giving 2 stars to. So I read Sophie McIntosh's previous book, The Water Cure, and I remember enjoying her writing and everything in that one. So that, along with this very intriguing cover, led me to want to pick this one up. In this book, we're following a world where I believe like once a female starts their period, then they're drawing a lottery ticket, and depending on which ticket you have, you either go on to have a career and basically just like live your life. You don't have kids though, or if you get another ticket, you are basically on the track to finding a mate, having kids, that type of life. And so we're following our main character Kala, and she gets the ticket where basically you get your freedom but you don't get kids. So I thought this was such an interesting premise, but something about the book kind of just fell flat for me. I listened to it mostly on audiobook, and I just felt like as the story went on, I just wasn't crazy about the direction that it went in. I kind of felt confused and like what was the point at certain times. I just found myself like really losing interest and not really caring too much, and even with everything that happened in the end, kind of feeling let down. So this isn't one that I would highly recommend, but I still would be open to reading a third book by Sophie McIntosh to see if I'm into her writing or not, just based on the last 2 that I read. It's not the writing so much that was bad, it's just like the story itself I just ended up not really liking or enjoying, so that's why I gave it 2 stars. Next we have Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. I was able to receive a copy of this book from Booksparks, but I actually ended up listening to it mostly on audiobook, and I gave this one 4 stars. This is a mystery thriller book, and it has a very fun setting where we're following this family as they're reuniting. I believe it was to hear somebody's they're all reuniting on this island. It's very like gothic vibes, and their Nana is having her 80th birthday party. Each of them is all assembling there, and one by one everyone starts dying off. And so this is definitely a loosely retelling of Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. I feel like there's been so many retellings of that book, but I feel like this one was still very interesting and I enjoyed it. It was very just like easy to read, easy to listen to, mystery thriller. Although the ending I would say is I wasn't the biggest fan of. So that's why I gave it 4 stars, but all around, like, this is my first time reading Alice Feeney, and I definitely, after reading this book, I will pick up probably other books from her in the future. And I also picked up the audiobook for another new release, and that is The Paulbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. I gave this one 3 stars. I will say, like, when I first started off the book, I was really loving it, and I thought this book was going to be maybe 5-star read, but just like as I progressively got more into the book, I kind of found myself losing interest in it and not being that really invested in the story itself. But when I did start off, I really did enjoy it because I thought it was like an interesting concept. So we're reading this guy, essentially his autobiography, and at the same time one of his friends, who is also one of the main characters in the novel, is writing or annotating their own notes on and commentary on this autobiography, either like just like making fun of certain things or saying like, you know, this is wrong, you're remembering things wrong, this isn't how this happened, this is how it really happened. So I thought that was really cool and different. I had never seen anything like that, and it's a very unique concept. We're following Art Barbara, who is in high school in the 80s, and he ends up starting this after school club called the Paulbearers Club, and they basically go to volunteer at this funeral home to help people who basically be pallbearers for their funerals and stuff. He ends up making friends with this other girl who joins the club, who is taking pictures of, he thinks it's kind of weird, she like takes pictures of the dead bodies while they're there. And we're following their friendship through decades basically. And it was a very, like I said, interesting concept, but yeah, overall just a 3-star read for me. Like, I thought it was good, but it just didn't like hugely leave a strong impression on me. But I do know that it is definitely unique. 5 stars for the interesting concept, and I hope that I can read something similar to this again in the future that maybe I will rate a little bit more highly. Another new release that I also listened to on audiobook was Nightcrawling by Layla Motley, and I gave this one 4 stars. This book, we are following a young black woman. Her name is Kiara, and she lives in Oakland with her brother. This story is so hard-hitting, so sad. I remember listening to this while I was also doing a lot of driving at the time around the Bay Area, so I thought it was kind of, I feel like I always love when that happens, when I'm reading a book about the Bay Area while I'm like spending time there. I just feel like it's really cool. I don't know. But this is the author's debut, and for a debut novel, I think it was great. This book also is, I don't remember if it's made the long list or the short list for the Man Booker Prize, I believe it was, but it's definitely worthy of award attention, I believe. And we are following, like I said, Kiara, who she is this young girl. She has dropped out of school and her mom's not really there. We know something has happened with her mom in the past that has led to her being in the care of her brother. We eventually find that later on in the book, but she's pretty much just doing what she can to be able to stay in their apartment. She's only like 17, I believe. In the book, she is very desperate to be able to survive and keep her and her brother in their apartment, as well as this other young boy in their apartment building that she's also trying to help take care of because his mother isn't there for him as well. It is a very hard-hitting book, like I said. And so because she's so desperate, she ends up turning to what she calls nightcrawling and working on the streets and in the working as a sex worker. It's very rough to read at times, very, very sad, but I feel like it just really shows how people can easily be taken advantage of, especially in the situation that she ends up in. I don't want to give spoilers away or anything, but the fact that her situation is based off of an actual incident that happened before is just crazy to me. Like I said, I don't want to give anything away, but I would recommend this book to you guys. Next, we have a book that unfortunately I DNF'd, and that was The Ones We're Meant to Find by Joan He. I really tried to get into this one. I don't even remember how far I got into the audiobook. I ended up giving it like 2 stars because I just was so confused. I didn't understand what was going on at the time. I really was trying my hardest to see what was going on, but we're following, I can't even fully like explain this book to you guys, and I kind of don't even really want to attempt to because I don't even fully remember because I didn't even really understand at the time when I was reading. So whatever I would say kind of probably wouldn't even make any sense. So this book is marketed as a sci-fi book, and I thought it would be interesting. Like, we're following this girl on an island and she has an android that she has that's helping keep her company, but she doesn't have her memory. And also we're following another girl who is on this eco city thing. It just overall didn't work for me, and I wasn't gonna make myself continue on when I wasn't enjoying the book, so this was a DNF. Next we have The Deceptions by Jill Bielowski. This was a book I picked up from Counterpoint Press. They sent me this book, and at first I'd seen it, I thought I was very intrigued by the cover, but I didn't think I was going to pick it up. But when they sent it to me, I decided to give it a try. I actually ended up listening to this on audiobook, and I enjoyed this a lot more than I expected to. I ended up giving this book 4 stars as my rating. We're following this couple, and both of them are like involved in academic life. I believe one of them is like an artist, or no, one of them is we're following our unnamed narrator, and her only child has just left home, and she's in a 20-year-old marriage that is feeling a little bit strained. She's soon to be releasing this book of poetry, and she's trying to find the answer to a lot of questions that she has. And this was just such a quiet book, but reading about a woman basically trying to rediscover who she is after essentially becoming like an empty nester and having to figure out what she wants to do with her marriage, with her career, and all this stuff. I just felt this book was just very smartly done, and I really enjoyed reading this book. It was such an unassuming book, but I really enjoyed it, like I said, a lot more than I expected to. I feel like the book really brings up a lot of interesting topics, and I will definitely be looking out for other books by this author. Next, we have a classic, and I haven't read a classic in so long, you guys. I picked up one of the very well-known ones, and that is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. This was my first and definitely not my last time picking up a Bronte novel. I really enjoyed just getting back into the feel of reading classics again, and I definitely missed that. And finishing this book, it made me motivated me to want to continue on reading classics, you know, at least like one a month or something like that, because I do enjoy reading them. One thing that kept it from being a high rating for me was I was just so confused with how everybody was related, because so many people have similar names, and people are like marrying within each other and stuff, and it's just, that was a little bit confusing. But overall I really enjoyed the story. I actually hadn't had any spoilers before about this book either. I haven't watched any of the adaptations, but now that I have finished it, I would love to watch an adaptation of Wuthering Heights. I would definitely say this book is not like a romance, and I just now am glad to know, like, I've heard of the character of Heathcliff before, but I never really knew like what he was about and everything, and I think it was very interesting. I watched a lot of YouTube videos to actually help explain this book to me as well, which I honestly often do with classic books, to make sure like I'm getting everything and I didn't miss out on any of the plot line and stuff. At the beginning of the novel, we're following this like poor young boy who's basically been fostered into this family, and his relationship with his new like brother and sister, and as well as there's these other kids that live nearby that they end up like their families intermeshing together. All together, I did enjoy this, and like I said, I'm going to be picking up a lot more classics hopefully soon. Next we have Middle Passage by Charles Johnson. This book is very short, but a lot of stuff happens in this book, and I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars, maybe like even 4.5. This is something I could see myself even giving possibly 5 stars to if I were to reread it again. The first like third of the book, I was for sure I was going to give this book 5 stars, but then some of it started to drag on a little bit towards the end, especially the parts in the ship. So this book takes place in 1830s New Orleans. We're following Rutherford Calhoun. He's a newly freed slave, but he's trying to escape the city that he's in because he's basically trying to not have to marry this school teacher who is trying to get him to marry her, as well as he has these bill collectors and people that are after him, so he decides to hide out on this ship that's sailing out from the harbor. And from there, he has a lot of stuff that goes on this ship, because it ends up, I think, being like a slave ship. They're picking up a cargo of slaves, and reading about them on the ocean during this, as it's all called, Middle Passage, is very interesting, and the stuff that happens, there was a lot of action. I really enjoyed the author's writing style and everything. I need to look up and see what else Charles Johnson has written, because I would definitely be interested in picking up more books by this author for sure. Then last but not least, I read The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. This book was my only 5-star read of the month, and it was so great. I actually listened to this on audiobook and I had to go out and buy the physical copy of it immediately after I finished it because I loved it so much. 5 stars. I am going to be picking up everything that Maggie O'Farrell writes, unless this was a fluke and I don't end up liking the next book of hers that I read. But in this book, it takes place during Renaissance Italy, and we're following our main character, Lucrezia de Medici, I believe was her name. And she grows up, and she's the youngest of her sisters in the Medici family, so she's kind of overlooked. No one really pays too much attention to her. They pay more attention to like her brothers and her older sisters. This book is actually based off of an actual real person. She was a real person in history. We just don't really know much about her, and I really love how Maggie O'Farrell chose to bring her to life and her subsequent marriage, because her, as it starts out in the beginning of the novel, we are thrown into the action of her, I believe, like sitting down to dinner or something with her husband, who is the Duke of Ferrara or something like that, one of those places. And she's basically talking about how she's pretty sure her husband's trying to kill her. And then we go back in time to see what led up to this moment. And we go back and forth between the 2 timelines of her currently being married and then her growing up from childhood. I just love this book so much. I can't wait to reread it again. I will be rereading it physically whenever I do pick it up again. I can't recommend this book enough. This book is one of my favorite books of the year for sure. This is one of the top favorite books of the year, and possibly a new favorite book of all time, well, like on that list. So I'm really glad that I picked this book up. Like, I had put it, I believe, on my most anticipated list. I didn't really think I was going to get to it this soon as I did, but I'm so glad that I did not put off picking up this book. So if this is a book that you had on your radar or you're thinking about picking up, I would definitely highly recommend that you guys do, because I just can't praise this book enough. I really loved it. 5 stars, and I rarely give 5 stars out, so I really just save it for like my really truly favorite books. So those are all of the books that I got to in the month of September. Let me know if you guys read any of these or what you guys did get to read in the month of September. Don't forget to do all that good normal stuff, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!